Well, then we'll move into the self-confidence part of this. They're very closely related, of course, but the difference is that self-esteem has to do with love and self-confidence has to do with power, in the good sense. Okay? It has to do with the feeling that you can do something, that you have an ability, a talent, a skill, knowledge that you can apply to something. Okay? And again, it's very similar in the terms of self-esteem. If you want your self-confidence to grow, you do not doubt yourself. And you don't criticize your skill for not being good enough. Right? You've got to praise whatever skill you have, and then that skill increases. It gets better. I wanted to develop the skill of, this is kind of a psychic skill, but I wanted to develop the skill of being able to turn to a page in the book whenever I flipped one open. And so I applied this technique to try and learn to do that. My body knows where the right page is in a book. Right? I'm assuming that it's aware of the whole thing. And so it feels so good when I do that. Well, let's see, I have to look up something. There it is, right there. So what I started to do was really praise my, we call this inner self coup in our terminology. I started to really praise my coup. And then it started doing it more often. Now it's almost invariable that if I need to look something up and the topic is in a particular book and I'll flip open the book, I'll rarely be more than a page off and usually right on it. It's just a skill that developed because I praised it every time it happened, and I still do. How did I praise it? Simplest way in the world. Thank you. Thank you. You know what that really means? From its original roots in Northern Europe, praise you. So in Hawaiian, we have an almost identical concept. Mahalo is used to translate thank you. Mahalo means praise. It's a praise. And whenever you praise someone, or something, there's a tendency for it to repeat that action and improve on it. That works. People will say, we even have a saying in English, and it's got to be something similar in other languages, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. We've got it as a saying in the language, and people ignore it all the time. Okay? The reason that most people will ignore it is because it doesn't give them a sense of power. There's a false sense of power when you can tell somebody they're wrong, when you can make a correction, even with yourself. So some people find it hard to give up self-criticism because it feels powerful to criticize yourself. That's how they learned it. Okay? And so they have more trouble giving it up. Okay? Doesn't work very well, but that doesn't matter. There's the feeling that they're addicted to when they don't feel powerful or self-confident in any other way.
Isn't that like a question of focus? If I can criticize someone, then I know what's right and the other person doesn't.
Well, of course.
If I say you've done well, then they know something that I merely recognized.
That's right, see? So in a very subtle way, for some people, it can be a power issue. The less powerful you feel, the less self-confident you are, the greater the tendency to try and control other people in some way. And it's all control other people or influence other people or affect other people. One of the first things that many children learn with this sense of power is the power of no. Right? Wow. I can just say no and look what I do to all these big people. Okay? Even if I get them upset, whew, that's powerful. And some people learn that as a behavior. I didn't realize that I had learned it too, Well, no, actually, I didn't learn it. Some of us learn, on the other hand, how to please, okay, so that we don't disturb things, how to say yes all the time. Well, my mother was like that, so I was a yes person for a while, and I thought I'd gotten over that until I got to Africa. Then I told you I was in that director position, didn't really understand the language. I had to speak French professionally, and so when anybody said anything I didn't know, I'd say yes. Oui. Boy, did I get in trouble. Oh, man. And so I said, okay, hold it, stop. Anything anybody asked me to do, I said no. And then they had to stop and explain it to me. Okay? So that was different. But powerful. Powerful. Okay? There was, I remember, a version of this, and we have this urge to be effective, that we call it powerful, but it's actually the urge to be effective. We have another urge to connect, but we also have this urge to be effective. It translates into power for many people in a negative sense. But in one curious example of this, we had my son and his family, my oldest boy and his family were over here for a visit. And we were carrying some packages and boxes and things from the car to a condo that they were renting. And at that time, we had a girl, I think she was about 3, probably about 3 years old at that time, one of his daughters. And she had plunked herself right in the center of the sidewalk where all the adults had to walk carrying these packages. And she was looking around, people were walking from behind on this direction, and she was looking around as if she were looking at the trees and the birds and things. And everybody that came up to her had to walk around her. Okay? Until I got there, because I knew what she was doing. So I walked up, put my package down, picked her up gently by the shoulders, put her on the grass, smiled at her, and she turned around and smiled at me because she knew I knew. And then I picked up my package and kept going. Okay, she was doing a little power trip. She had learned a way to influence the adults because she had to do something. It's a born urge of all of us human beings to be effective in some way. The less we think we are effective, the more we tend to distort that urge. And so with some people it can turn to vandalism, with others to violence. Most people, it's criticism, okay, as a way of trying to be effective because that's a technique that they learned. Remember, the intent there, when it's positive, is to try and help somebody change. And that's an effectiveness urge, right? So we have all of this. Well, there are a lot better ways to feel effective. And this is what we're getting into now. Ways to not only be powerful, but even more important, feel powerful. That's more important. More important than being loved is feeling loved. Because then you'll interpret anything anybody does as, oh, sign that they love you. Ah, giving me a challenge, are you? Thank you very much. Okay? So we want to find some ways of feeling confident. Now, the more you feel confident, the more effective your actions are. My oldest son I told you about, when he was younger, he was taking martial arts, a martial art called Hapkido, Korean style, mainly kicking. But at first, he was having some real trouble with self-esteem and in relation to fighting the other boys, even in the ritual contests that they did. And so we did some techniques to help him with that until he felt more self-esteem in relation to them and to what he was doing. Then it came the problem of confidence in his skill. And so I taught him a very simple process. I said, okay, let me tell you a secret. In any encounter like you're going to have, he wanted to start entering tournaments. I said, in any encounter you're going to have, considering that the skill of both parties is about equal, the one who wins is going to be the one who has the most presence and the most self-confidence. That's going to be the winner, invariably. All right, so he took that to heart. And he took that to heart in ways that I had not anticipated, which is a wonderful thing about teaching children this stuff. They teach you things too. But in his particular case, what he learned was, one of the things he learned was that he didn't have to practice all week long. I mean, when he reached a skill level, his body had the skill. So he didn't have to practice all week long before a tournament. He just wait until he got to the tournament, be present, have no doubt, and he won. He got so good that I remember one time, at least, probably more than once, because, parents only hear a little bit of what their children do. But at least one time I know of, why he went out partying the night before, came into the tournament with a hangover, okay? Presence and no doubt, and won the tournament again. Given roughly equal skill, that will always happen. He won the tournaments every time for 5 years in a row before he stopped. Okay? And he developed his skill, of course, that was vital, necessary, but get into a state of presence, which means not thinking about the past or the future. And the fast track way to self-confidence is stop doubting. So that's what I taught him. No doubt. And he was immensely competent at what he was trained to do.